3,500 children adopted each year in the UK. Of them, only 100 or 200 will be adopted at birth, and really the average age for children to be adopted is 4 years old. Due to the backgrounds of adopted children, they're likely to have a range of emotional, behavioural, developmental difficulties, which will also have a major impact on their educational ability as well.
Hello, Jonathan Pierce.
Some of my children have been bullied at school. Some of them have learning difficulties. Their education is behind other children, and very often allowance isn't made for that within the classroom, so it does make it very difficult for them. One of my daughters who was being very badly bullied at school, the only way we could solve the problem was to actually move her to another school. With another one of my daughters, where there were areas of the curriculum that were impacting on her and making her quite upset.
I had to write about a biography about what happened about childhood, and it really upsets me because you have to remember everything from the past and that and childhood.
Children who've experienced relational traumas and losses in their early years quite often are at risk of having attachment difficulties, which means that it puts them at a disadvantage in schools. So even though they're in an adoptive placement or even though they're in a safe school, they can still be on this hyper alert, and they're very oversensitive and hypervigilant to danger.
The executive functioning skills of children who have suffered early trauma are often not as developed as they should be for their chronological age. The executive functioning skills are the skills that underlie problem solving and underlie learning, and they begin to develop in early babyhood and continue until at least the mid-20s.
Children who have experienced significant traumas and losses, their brain is actually really affected by this. So what happens is, for them, the brainstem, which is responsible for fight, flight, freeze responses, is on high alert. So this part of the brain is working very, very well for these children. But the part that isn't working so well is the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for your logic, your empathy and your cause and effect. Also what I'm seeing with adopted children out in schools is they've got higher levels of cortisol, stress hormone in their body, so it actually makes it very difficult for them to sit still and to manage long periods of time. They can have difficulties focusing and concentrating, they can have difficulties interpreting social situations, which puts them at risk. They have difficulties out in the playgrounds. They can also find the curriculum very difficult as well, because that can actually trigger off very difficult memories for them.
It's important that the impact of that loss and trauma in their early life is recognised, so that they have the same priorities, the same rights and the same interventions that looked after children have within the educational setting.
I would really like to see some national training available in our universities and colleges across the board for education staff to have access to all the latest information around trauma and loss, so that they can really understand attachment difficulties. I'd also like to see adopted children having more access to funding and key workers.
Adoption UK wants to call on the government to make changes to the educational system for adopted children so that their needs are acknowledged and recognised within the education system, and that services are provided for them.
My daughter experienced a number of difficulties, particularly in mainstream school where she's remained from the start. She had delayed language skills, difficult problems with memory, especially short-term memory. So if she was given an instruction or learnt a new concept in class, it was very difficult for her to retain that information.
I think I got more help at primary school because I had a statement of special needs then. And then when I got to secondary school, I still had it for about 2 years. They thought I got too good, so they took me off it, and then I was treated like all the other kids at school.
There are long-term consequences in not addressing the educational needs of traumatised children, whether they're adopted, still in the care system or some other vulnerable group. We know that children in the care system are overrepresented in the prison population or involved in the criminal justice system. There are low educational outcomes for them. They're also overrepresented in terms of mental health issues as well. Therefore, with actually some relatively simple changes and some understanding of those issues for adopted and other traumatised children, we can make big changes in the educational chances that those children have.